Hello and welcome to episode 38, Property Mastermind podcast with Hilary Saxton. Today talking how do you find a buyer's agent and what is a good one? It's going to be a great episode. As usual, I'm joined by the amazing Bob Andersen. So let's jump into episode 38. Promises to be very enlightening. Hello and welcome again to episode 38, how to find a buyer's agent and what is a good one. But before we get started, giving away a copy of our Property Millionaires, Secrets of Property Millionaires Exposed. Today, this is going to Carla Ford because she's in our community and she just had a baby.
Oh, that's a good reason.
Yeah, beautiful name. I can't remember it now. Just like, it was such a beautiful name. So congratulations, Carla. Book coming your way because you're going to have plenty of time to be reading now that you're a new mum. I don't think so. I don't think so. But yes, well done. And can't wait to hear a little bit more about the baby.
Mm.
So, Bob.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming down the hallway again.
It's okay. I got here safe and sound.
You did. Thank you. Well, we had a big weekend last weekend. We had our workshop in Melbourne.
Wasn't that tremendous?
An amazing workshop.
Great workshop in beautiful Melbourne.
It was a great workshop. It was such a high amount of energy.
Yeah, it was. It was because, we had to put it off several times.
Yeah.
And I think everybody was just building up anticipation, I think, including ourselves. So, yeah, it was. It just went off.
Went off. Such an amazing group of people. We just had such a good time. I think excluding two people, because they had prior commitments and families, etc. We all went out for dinner. It was just so much fun. There's like over 50 of us. Absolutely amazing night.
At the restaurant there was, yeah.
So
it was
much
great.
fun. Yeah, amazing. So yeah, all those Victorians and the people that flew there from
A couple of flew from Sydney, yeah.
And from up here, from Queensland, had a few people, and from South Australia too.
Yeah, a few
and
there.
from the Northern Territory, Bob.
Well, yeah.
Had
mostly Melburnians, but
mostly the Melburnians.
a few fly-ins.
Yeah, it was fabulous. Anyway, Bob, I suppose before we get into, should we start with what is a buyer's agent?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, it's almost the opposite of a real estate agent in a way. If you think that a real estate agent represents the seller of a property and they get paid a commission when they produce a buyer, a buyer's agent, or not always called a buyer's agent.
Buyer's advocate in Victoria?
Victoria and Tasmania for sure, at least, are called a buyer's advocate. We'll call them a buyer's agent anyway for the sake of this this almost said webinar, make it a podcast. Whereas a buyer's agent represents the buyer, not the seller, like a real estate agent. And their job, of course, find something. Find a deal for the buyer. Find a property for the buyer.
I did a great interview with a buyer's agent friend and inside our property accelerator. And that was really enlightening from a buyer's agent perspective. I learned so much just from how she places herself and what she does. It was really interesting, actually. Yeah. That was old Jo. She's in this book.
No, she's in the secret book as well.
And Secrets of Property Millionaires Exposed.
And she's a good friend of ours as well. Yeah, so buyer's agent. I guess the question is, why would you want one?
The reason I point our clients or the people I work with to get a buyer's agent is I think it speeds up the process for a lot of people.
Particularly people that are time poor. Everything we do is around property development. So what we need to do is to find a site, not just find a site, but a site that stacks up financially. And a lot of people have limited time. Might be a couple with young kids or even teenagers, probably even more on the weekends. They've got so many activities to do. They're working all week and the weekends are just taken up with kids' activities and so forth. So if that's a problem, if somebody's time poor, then
it's a problem.
Yeah, it is a problem.
If it's a problem, it's actually a problem.
Yeah, so that'll overcome that side of it. But also, like you often heard me say, leverage the expert's time and expertise.
Yep.
It doesn't matter who that expert is. And in this case, it's a buyer's agent. So you leverage their time because they're the ones who go out and look, and their expertise because they should be experts on finding the type of property that you want.
And often they'll find things for people that, well, that's what you hope, is that they're finding off-market properties, properties that aren't currently listed, but they are available, and they've got, the opportunity to come up with those for people.
Yeah. Well, for me, that's the strength of a buyer's agent. Like, I wouldn't want a buyer's agent to contact me and say, look, here's a property. It's been listed on realestate.com for 2 weeks. That's not what I'm paying somebody for.
That's like the last thing.
Well, I probably saw it 2 weeks ago myself, but it's the last thing. But so, as you just said, off-market opportunities. To me, that's where a buyer's agent really earns their keep. Yeah. By finding properties that aren't officially on the market, or before they go to the market, I'm happy to pay for that.
I remember when I spoke with Jo, I said to her, because for me, I was like, why would people even, have a buyer's agent? Why wouldn't you just sell your property through a real estate agent? And the reasons were very interesting. They were reasons like they don't want people going through their homes because they're very busy. They just don't want people going through their property. There's no time to prepare for open homes. They're quite private. There were so many reasons.
Sort of off market, and that they're not out there flying the flag.
No, exactly.
Come and buy me, that can happen. And of course, a buyer's agent should have good contacts, particularly, in our area where we're looking for a development site, they should have contacts in the professional area, like architects, town planners, civil engineers, all those sorts of people who could be working on, if you like, property development sites. Often that's how you can get a site with a development permit through a buyer's agent who has contacts with town planners and architects, particularly if the client of the architect or the town planner intends selling it when they get their approval. You can get in early. And that's what I love about it. Don't wait until it's got a development permit and then goes on the open market. You can get in early through a buyer's agent if they've got those sorts of contacts, and you can negotiate off market. And I've often done that when I've used buyer's agents, because you're not under that pressure. Once it hits the open market, it could be an auction, even if it's just a general listing, in a hot market, could go quickly.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Off-market deals are great, and that's one of the things that a good buyer's agent should have access to.
Yeah. And so what do they actually do where do they go to get theirs? Like, what does a buyer's agent actually do to get there? Is it just through their networks, or they go to the same clients?
Yeah, well, often networks. We could do the same things buyer's agents do, but we might not want to. We might not feel we've got the expertise, and we might not have the time. So a good buyer's agent, as I just said before, they would have contacts in real estate. So they would have contacts within the professional ranks, like I just mentioned, architects, town planners, civil engineers, all those sorts of ones, for getting sites that are in for approval. But also they have a good network of real estate agent contacts. Remember, the person selling the home pays the commission to the agent. The person buying the home pays it to the buyer's agent. So the real estate agent doesn't have to share the commission. If you like, the commission from the buyer is the buyer's agent gets their commission from the buyer. So there's no sort of conflict there between a buyer's agent and an agent as such. They both get their full pay, their full commission.
Just from different parties.
From different parties, and a good buyer's agent will have some very good contacts in that area. Let's say it's a buyer's agent who finds development sites, because that's the sort of buyer's agent we want. We don't necessarily want a buyer's agent that finds investment properties for people, or that might
mostly because they won't stack up.
Well, they won't know. Yeah. They won't know what to look for. There are buyer's agents that specialise just purely in investments. And so as a result, no, we want a buyer's agent that does development sites. That's what we want. And these agents, this network of agents that they have, what happens sometimes is somebody might have a property for sale. It gets taken off the market for whatever reason. Buyer might change their mind. They might have been asking too high a price and they've taken it off the market. But it doesn't mean that they wouldn't sell. And often agents know that. But also an agent who's talking to a potential seller early, before it's officially listed. So they're talking to someone who's going to sell their property. It's going to be a development site, let's say a raw one with no approvals. And the agent knows it's coming up for sale. And so they could quickly ring their friend, the buyer's agent, and say, hey, look, I've got a site that I'm going to list probably at the end of the week. It's zoned, for townhouses or whatever it is. Do you have any buyers who could be interested? Agents go straight to a buyer's agent because the buyer's agent, remember, has the buyers. And everyone gets their full commission, so they don't have to share it.
Oh,
if the
of
agent
course.
went to another agent friend and said, have you got any buyers, they'd end up having to split the commission,
Yeah.
but not in this case. And that can be really good because you can get in early. Yeah, so, a whole range of methods. Some buyer's agents track data off, applications in council as well and all those sorts of things. There's lots of ways they track down deals.
What's their training, Bob? Like, what does a buyer's agent have to do? I did remember we had somebody in the family looking at doing that.
Yeah.
Did she carry on with that?
Yeah. So you need to be licensed. So each state has a licensing regime, and it's a state by state thing. In the same way that real estate agents need to be licensed, either as a full license to the owner of the real estate agency or a salesman's license. So too does a buyer's agent, and they need to be licensed appropriately for their state. It wasn't always that way, but these days it is. And that's a good thing.
Yeah, we don't want cowboys out there.
Well,
No
there's always
cowboys.
cowboys of some sort, probably even in the world of buyer's agents.
Yep.
But so
And
that's what you got to do.
You brought up, different like buyer's agents that do investments and development sites. What other sort of buyer's agents are there? Just those two? Or?
Oh, I've met one who finds executive housing for people, so really top-end housing. See, a lot of people that are really wealthy and busy, they might have very good businesses, they're quite wealthy. They've got better things to do with their time than running around looking at places, and they prefer, and they understand how it can work. Somebody looking for them. They don't necessarily want to do the negotiating either, and a good buyer's agent can negotiate the price as well. Sometimes it's a bit of an arm wrestle between the buyer's agent and the agent. I mean, a good real estate agent should represent the seller and try and get the best price. A good buyer's agent represents the buyer and just tries to get the best
It's
price.
a bit of a seesaw juggle.
Well,
at
it's
the
a bit
end
of an
there.
arm wrestle.
Yeah, I hear you.
Sometimes. And a good buyer's agent, in my opinion, should be able to negotiate their fees off. They should be a good negotiator. They should go in hard, try and get the best deal for the buyer, and enough to pay for their fees. Because a lot of buyers don't have the negotiation skills or the courage, if you like, to really go in hard.
And like how we came up with this podcast because one of my clients was asking questions about it, and I thought, well, if someone else is asking, there's other people asking. So how do you find a buyer's agent? Like, what's the best way to find one?
Well, I mean,
Google.
Our old friend Google could be a
Google,
good start. No, seriously, that would probably be a good start if you didn't know any. If you just, I'll tell you what I have done once, because I had one of our mentoring students in Melbourne. They said, I'd really like to find a buyer's agent. I don't know where to start. And I said, well, look, start at Google. And Google something like buyer's agents, or buyer's advocates, because it was in Melbourne. And then put development, or the buyer's agent development sites. Like, it's basically a word search, a phrase search, and see what comes up. And what tends to come up, buyer's agents in Melbourne, obviously, but where development sites, those sorts of things come up, and quite often they come up in the About Us part of their website. That's what I've noticed. And so within 25 minutes, we'd located 5 buyer's agents in Melbourne who said in their About Us on their own websites that they find development sites.
Oh, right, okay.
So that was a start. I mean, there's a lot more questions you'd ask the buyer's agent, of course, than that, but that can be a way of tracking them down. I have seen, actually, that there's, how a finance broker finds you good finance and a building broker finds you a good builder. I actually found a buyer's agent broker who supposedly finds you good buyer's agents. Yeah, I didn't know that until recently.
Oh, actually,
I don't know how good they are.
No, well, because there are good and not so good buyer's agents.
Yeah, and,
We had
buyer's agents brokers perhaps too,
We had that person contact us. So we have people join our Facebook groups, but often they just join it so they can sell their wares on our community. And I don't know if ever grown your own social community, it's a big job, really.
Yeah, it's an expensive job.
Oh, it can be expensive. All the work you put into getting a community together, and and then they come along and then they join your community and then want to start
Want to
soliciting for
posting all over your Facebook site.
See, I think I saw him post
Selling your
something last
wares.
night somewhere else. I thought, oh, someone else has let you in.
It's
so
a funny old business.
They mostly would have their own, obviously, websites, wouldn't they?
Well, I'd like to think that they do.
Yeah.
It's important that a buyer's agent be professional, but perception's important, as we know. And
like you said, there's cowboys in every industry.
Yeah, so I'd want to see a presence. I want to see a website. I want to see them on LinkedIn. A professional presence. Yeah.
And so once you find one, Bob, and you've used them quite a bit, haven't you? You're a buyer's agent.
I do. Yeah. Look, I've met people, strangely enough, who say, "Oh, I'm not going to pay anybody to find me a site," because they're used to selling stuff where they just sell it, and the agent sort of puts their clip out of the settlement funds. You almost don't sort of feel it. And they're saying, "Oh no, I should be able to just buy one without paying anybody. I'll find a real estate agent that's got a site, and the seller's paying the real estate agent. I don't have to." It's a bit of a closed mind, really, because a buyer's agent, well, besides saving you a lot of time, would generally have a lot more connections than the average person. They'd also be good negotiators, and they'll probably end up getting it at a better price than the average person as well.
I actually remember also we've got another person in our mentoring group, and you were talking about it on the on our live Q&A, and you said we talked about getting buyer's agents. She went and got one and had a site within 2 weeks.
Oh, that was Sonia.
No, that was actually Kaz.
Oh, Kaz.
And actually,
there's two.
There's two.
I'm thinking of someone
and
else.
And so
as well.
did another couple just recently got one in Victoria, and they were looking for a while, struggling. And I said, "Look, why don't you just hire a buyer's agent?"
Yep.
And they were within 2 weeks.
It's best advice you gave them.
Yeah,
they spend a lot of time looking.
Yeah, you do
and
spend
not buying.
You can. Yeah, it does speed up the process. And I suppose that sort of leads us to, you've found one. Maybe you've asked for recommendations. Maybe somebody's referred them. But what are the best questions that you believe somebody should ask a buyer's agent, and why?
One of the first questions I'd ask is, no, not how much do you charge.
That's what people always do.
Oh, I know.
Price is what you pay, value is what you get.
Yeah, I'd like to know, how long have they been a buyer's agent? Because there's been some buyer's agent courses pushed out in the marketplace in recent times, like learn how to be a buyer's agent, where you pay a certain amount of money and, they tell you how wonderful it is. But so as a result, there's probably a lot of people who aren't experienced that recently have become buyer's agent because they've basically been sold into it. So, and so I'd like to see a buyer's agent with minimum 5 years experience. The reason for that is if they've been a buyer's agent for 5 years and they're still going, they must be doing something right.
Yes.
That
whole business is closed down the first 3 years.
Yeah, they wouldn't have lasted. So that doesn't mean somebody who started recently isn't any good.
No, especially if they've come from a salesy background, because they've probably got really good communication skills. Yeah,
and you see that. I know some buyer's agents who are like 20 years as real estate agents and have come across to be buyer's agents. Well, they don't need to have 5 years experience as a buyer's agent. They've got 20 years the other way. But I'd like to know that because to me that's important. Somebody who doesn't necessarily have a property background or a real estate background who suddenly becomes a buyer's agent, in the last 12 months, well, I don't know if they're good enough yet.
You like a bit of a track record almost.
I like a track record.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I suppose one of the other things is make sure they're licensed. Like we said before, each state has its own licensing regime.
Is it different levels of education as well to get that license? Yeah. Are some harder than others? Are some states more difficult?
I think there's a lot of conformity between the states now, even on real estate agents' licenses. There's a lot of commonality, but yeah, I mean, make sure they're licensed. That's a good thing. I mean, qualifications, I guess, but that doesn't necessarily count. I mean, they might have qualifications, some sort of property qualifications, other than having studied for their licence. I don't see that as a biggie. I mean, I've got no qualifications as a property developer. I've got no degrees in land economics or property development or anything. So
You've done all right, Paul.
I've done all right with
You know your stuff.
Yeah. I mean, there's memberships out there for buyers agents.
River?
Oh, yeah, that one. Yeah, that's right.
BA.
That one, yeah.
Real Estate
Real
Buyers Association.
Real Estate
Buyers Agents
Association
Association.
of Australia or something.
Yes.
Yeah. But look, I don't know how strong that is. I mean, if you're talking about real estate agents and they're members of the Real Estate Institute, Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland, whatever it is.
Savers House.
I mean, that's good. I mean, those organisations have been around a long, long time. They're pretty solid. But organisations representing buyers agents, I think, are fairly new. So I don't know what strength there is in being a member of that. I don't know. I just don't have an opinion on it.
And then I suppose the other question is, do they specialise in development sites, if that's what you're looking for?
Yeah, exactly. Very early question to ask.
And the list of questions. Question number 2.
Yeah, because we don't want to get down the track talking to someone who just finds investment properties. So that's important. I like the idea that they do specialise in that. And there are, I know some buyers agents all day, every day, just deal in development sites. And that's the ones we want. They're the ones we want to talk to. Yeah. You
used to be on a few buyers agents list, didn't you?
I still am.
And they send you through what's coming up right now.
Yeah. You've got to be selective. I mean, there's all sorts of buyers agents. So there's some buyers agents, even though they're doing development sites, they don't necessarily know a lot about development, particularly in the areas of due diligence and feasibilities, the numbers, Not that I really need them to, in a way. I mean, I've seen agents and even some buyers agents come up with a property and then do a full feasibility as a development, and sometimes it's shocking, like they just haven't got a clue. But that's okay. Don't rely on that. I mean, do your own due diligence.
You always say that, though. That's just due diligence is always your own responsibility.
And you'll give them parameters. I mean, it could be a location that you want one. It could be, if it's in this suburb, I'm looking for a duplex site. And I won't pay. I don't want to pay more than 1.1 million, whatever. That could be some pretty basic parameters around what we want. What I want them to look for.
That leads me to a question, Bob. Do buyers agents have their own particular area, or do they work in varied areas?
Yeah, good question. And that's certainly a question to ask.
Yes.
Do you have a particular locality that you specialise in?
Or you're quite spread out.
Yeah.
Because more spread out is great for investing, but I think not so good for people looking for development sites.
Yeah. Well, not all. Well, look, some do specialise in maybe just a few suburbs, a few sort of hot suburbs. But if you've got buyers agents who are well connected, as I said before, to people like architects and town planners, engineers, those sorts of people, that can come up with off-market, so they could be anywhere, and in which case, that's fine. Look, at the end of the day, like, give me a deal that stacks up. I might have my preference as far as locations go, but if a buyer's agent comes up with a property, 5 suburbs away, but it really stacks up,
there.
I'll be there. Yeah. As long as the due diligence stacks up, as long as the numbers stack up. For sure, yeah.
And then what about fees? There's such a variance on the way buyers agents structure their fees. So what is the more normal way of structure? Do you know?
Often it's a percentage, and I'm not a lover of percentages, on anything. Like if an architect wants to charge me a percentage, he won't. I want flat rates, I want fees, I want to understand the dollars. But look, if you're talking a percentage, it's often sort of in the range of 2 to 3%, 2 to 2.5% of the sale price. On a percentage, but although some work on a flat rate, X dollars, whether it's 15,000 or 18,000, whatever it is, that'll, not so much a percentage. If you think about it, let's just say a 4 townhouse site in one suburb sells for 800,000, and let's say a more upmarket suburb, a 4 townhouse site sells for 1.6. So that's double the price.
They get double.
And so if you got a percentage, it's double the money, but it's not double the work.
No.
So some of them therefore find a happy medium. They might say, look, 2.5% or $18,000, whichever is the less. Let's say, and they do it like that. I'd prefer that.
Yeah.
I don't just want it open ended because I know percentages when you get up in the higher values works against you as a purchaser.
And I do know that some buyer's agents have a sign-on fee. Is that standard?
Pretty much these days, often called a mandate fee. Mm-hmm. I mean, some commercial finance brokers do that too, you know, when you engage them to get you a good finance deal, it's a mandate fee. But yeah, buyer's agents.
And as of today, so we're talking February 2022, what is an average that you've heard mostly that people are paying? I know
it could be 20 to, well, once again, here we go with percentages. Let's just say, I'll go back to the hypothetical I did before with somebody who would be 2.5% or 18,000, let's say. Well, 25%. So that could be, 4,000, 3.5, 4,000, somewhere in that range. 20 to 25% of what the likely commission's going to be. Some people get funny about that. Why should I pay a buyer's agent some money up front? I'll pay them when they bring me a deal. And that's okay. You can welcome to your opinion. But the thing is here that when you engage a buyer's agent, you're giving them a job to go and do. So you put parameters about it. You might, it might be 2 suburbs you're prepared to buy in. It might be a certain price range, a certain type of development. It could be a small subdivision. It could be townhouse. It could even be apartments, whatever it is. So you've given them a whole range of parameters. They then have to go out there and start contacting their contacts.
Sourcing. That's sourcing.
Sourcing. They've got to source. And as stuff comes in, they might be culling some of the silly stuff and, the rubbish, the overpriced. They're doing quite a bit of work before they actually come up with a property that they think's a good one to present to you. And what can happen if they don't get the mandate fee? They put a lot of work in. They arrive with a deal. And somebody says, I bought one yesterday from a real estate agent or from someone else, or
like,
I've changed my mind, or, whatever.
Yeah.
And then they've done all that work with no return.
Yeah.
And these people are professionals.
Yes.
They deserve to be paid for their efforts.
You can tell we're a bit pro, aren't we? Very pro buyer's agents.
Yeah. And look,
Mastermind.
I've probably only used buyer's agents maybe 15% of all the deals I've bought in my whole life. So it's not like I'm out there doing it all the time. But I do understand what a good buyer's agent can do and the benefits.
When does a buyer's agent get paid?
Well, if it's one of those mandate fees that you mentioned before, that would be at the time of engagement. And there'd be, paperwork. I sometimes call it a sign-on fee.
Yeah.
It's a bit like sports. Sometimes when a club gets somebody over, they pay a sign-on fee. But so that'd be up front. But they'd pay the balance, well, normally on settlement of the site. Although, if you think of it, sometimes a different arrangement might need to be made, because they could find a development site for somebody, for a developer, where a long settlement has been negotiated. It could be subject to getting a development approval. It could be...
And there are long settlements. It's very common.
Yeah. And so, if we're subject to getting development permit, it might be a bigger sort of, development to do that. And it could take 12 months to get it. And so if they get paid at settlement, they could be waiting anything from 12 months to 3 years on a big deal, which isn't really fair. So in that case, they might be looking at getting their fee earlier. Remember, unlike a real estate agent, it doesn't come out of the settlement fund, so you have to pay for it out of your pocket. It just means that you pay for it when the deal's not necessarily unconditional, when the contract's signed, depending. Most of the time, though, when you've got, quicker settlements, it would be at the time of settlement they get the balance of their funds.
And I think we've done quite a good summary there on buyer's agents. Have we missed anything out?
I don't know, but, maybe a tip or two perhaps, when you're going out there looking for buyer's agents. I said I'd be looking for somebody who's been around doing it for a while. I'd be wanting to have some referrals from a number of people whom they bought sites for.
Check out the Google reviews.
And recently. And there's another one.
Like we're big on Google
you're
reviews.
Always doing that, hey?
Yes.
Like we never go to a restaurant that we haven't been to before without you going through the reviews.
Yeah, just check.
Yeah, exactly. So, just a bit of due diligence on them, check them out. Because if they come as a referral from somebody you trust, and they've had a very good experience, that's a pretty good referral.
Then you're likely to get a good experience.
Yeah, should be.
All right. Well, I think that's a great everything you need to know about buyers agents.
Well, it's not everything.
Well,
it's close.
It's close. Most things you need to know about buyers agents podcast. Have you got anything else coming up, Bob?
Whereabouts? What do you mean?
I don't know. We need to let people know. We've got a one-day event coming up in Brisbane soon, actually.
Oh, well, yeah. We're going to it's not quite a party, but, I'm breaking out. We're breaking out, aren't we?
We're breaking out.
We're going to have...
Saturday the 2nd of April, I think it is.
Yeah, just
Mark your calendar.
What is it?
We haven't decided.
It's a something.
We haven't given it a name.
Haven't given it enough name. Just anybody that loves property development and wants to come along and...
Yeah, maybe even investing if you're interested.
Oh,
maybe
investing
not.
as well, yeah.
Anyway, I think time we signed off.
Okay.
Great, interesting. Thanks for your insights, Bob.
Thanks for the invitation to come and speak.
Great work. And we will catch you next week.
We shall do.